Welcome back to the Islander podcast with me, your host, Lucy Gardner. In this episode, I'll be speaking with long-term Mallorca resident, sailor, innovator and entrepreneur, Roger Horner, the founder of E3 Systems. And welcome back to the Islander podcast. I'm joined in the studio today by Roger Horner of E3 Systems. Roger, welcome to the studio.
Nice to be here.
Wonderful to see you today. It's been a long spring, a much delayed interview between you and I, but you've been very busy, you guys, at E3, along with the rest of the yachting industry, I'm sure. Tell us a little bit about how this year so far has been for you. I mean, post-pandemic and into the kind of busy refit season, you guys must be incredibly busy.
Well, it started off as a fantastic start of the year in January when we were launching lots of new ideas and new products for the year. And we always start off at the beginning of the year with our what we call our Start of the Year week, where we get the whole of our team from Europe and from the US together and have a long discussion about the new products and new launches, which we have put a lot of work in over the winter to get going. And we've been busy. We've been flat out ever since. Yeah.
And you've been here on Mallorca for quite some time now.
Yeah. Tell
us a little bit about how you had got around to getting to Mallorca and also then starting E3, because it's been an evolution.
Yes, it has. I mean, we, my wife and I sailed here originally. I had various companies in the UK involved in software and electronics, and I sold up. I sold up in '89, had a contract for 2 years to run the business under a PLC. I became a PLC company director and realized that after a couple of years, my entrepreneurial spirit was being somewhat squashed, being part of a large organization. And I had a 2-year contract and I left. And we decided to go sailing. Actually, it was a combination of that to do with commercial and job, but also we were struggling. My wife and I were struggling to have children, and we thought, let's go and do something that's a lot easier to do when you don't have children. So we thought we'd go long-term cruising, which is what we did. We headed off.
How fantastic! Life as sea gypsies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, we had a Moody 33 at that time, which we thought was just, well, we were persuaded by various people who'd done this before, that actually use the boat that you've already got. Use the boat that you've already got. Don't go out and buy a boat in case you don't like it. But, you know, we had a fantastic time in our first year. The only target we had was the Olympics in Barcelona. So we sailed down to Gibraltar and then around and up to the Olympics and had a blast there. We had, I think, with our 33-foot boat, we had something like 16 people staying on board.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness me.
Just south of Barcelona, we had a blast. It was fantastic. And we fell in love with Spain at that point. You know, the Olympics, we had no idea what to expect, and it was fantastic. And then from the Olympics, we all these people left, flew off and disappeared. And we sailed across to Mallorca, thinking that this was just a stepping stone on the way to the East Mediterranean. And one way or another, we got stuck here. Well, we didn't get stuck here. We kept leaving and coming back. To the extent that we actually, when we were here for the winter, that first winter, we ended up buying a bigger boat because we wanted to go around the world at that point. So we bought a 51-foot clipper ketch. And then suddenly, in the middle of all of this, having made this decision to go around the world, Nikki becomes pregnant. And so we've got a baby on the way, which is supposed to not be able to happen, which was fantastic.
Ah, a little bit of a miracle.
So basically a psychological treat based on let's do something that actually would be really awkward to do with a baby. So however, that didn't stop us. We still sailed across the Atlantic with a 9-month-old.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! How was that? How did that happen? How did that work? I mean, I guess that makes watches easier when you have to get up every few hours anyway.
Well, we had six. We had friends with us, so we had 6 adults, a baby, and a cat on board. And so, as it was our boat, we chose the best watches. Obviously, the morning and the evening. And so we had the best watches, and it was fantastic. And, I'm a great believer in preparation. Preparation's the name of the game. It's what you don't think of that's going to happen to you. So we did so much preparation. We had it. It all went perfectly.
Wow, I love that story completely. And so then you sailed around the world with a small child, friends and family in tow and a cat, and eventually got back to Mallorca. And is that where you decided that? Where was E3 then born? You've got a newborn, and now you've got a new business. So how did that happen?
Well, E3 was actually kind of like the inspiration came from being in the Caribbean. I actually got bored with blue azure bays and palm fringe beaches and reading books. And,
that sounds like a bad set of problems to have.
Yeah, I know, it is tricky. It's difficult to explain that to people who haven't done that. But, after some months of this, I thought, I've got to do something else. And we did a lot of writing. We did a lot of reading. We did all sorts of different stuff. And I was talking in Antigua to an electrical company over there, and I thought, it's interesting about starting up a company in Antigua. But actually, that didn't happen. Various things conspired for us to come back to the Mediterranean. But however, that idea still lurked in the back of my head. And on the way back, when I sailed back across to the Mediterranean, I put together on my night watches this business plan for starting an electronics company back in Mallorca. And when we got back to Mallorca, we thought, well, let's give it 6 months. Let's have a go. I put a 5-year business model together. Once we got back to Mallorca, sourced lots of local data as to the number of boats, marinas, et cetera, and the type of, did some research and on-the-ground investigation. And we actually, once we started the business in February '96, which actually, interestingly enough, we started the first internet cafe in Mallorca in Merivent. That was one of the first things we did. And we started it in February '96, and by the end of the first year, we actually completed my 5-year target for the business model.
Oh, my goodness me.
So we thought, this is going to work.
Such an evolution in the last 25 years of that, of data, of the internet, everything. The changes must have been absolutely immense, and you've seen them firsthand in the yachting industry, but also on this island. It must have changed the face of it completely.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, obviously, with this podcast with you today, with the Islander, John Rule, who actually who started the Islander right back in the beginning, he approached me in '96 and asked if I would write a column for the Islander. So I wrote the first column I did on technology in I think it must have been about March or April '96, which was issue 2, and I've written a column every month on technology. With the exception of about 3 or 4 that I've missed over that period of time. And if you read the stuff, it's fantastic to go back and see what I was writing about in '96 compared to today. Where we've come from and the growth of technology, the growth of data. I mean, even in the last couple of years, we had, a few years ago, we supplied data connectivity, satellite and terrestrial, the data consumption, about 3 years ago, we were waiting for the first yacht to hit 1 terabyte of data usage in the month in the summer. And one yacht hit it about 2 or 3 years ago. Last summer here, we had a yacht beat 3 terabytes in 1 month.
Wow.
Which is just, you can see the rate of data consumption is extraordinary.
The constant streaming of everything is just so different. And I think it's interesting that you and the Islander as well, the Islander's 25th anniversary this year as well. So your companies have a similar lifestyle, don't they? Yeah. Yes. I mean, the changes, like we said, we're doing a podcast here. So for publishing and media, obviously the changes in terms of consumption of data, and we all constantly scrolling, looking, recording. And then, of course, the appetite that on a yacht is no different. But of course, there's huge challenges involved in keeping vessels out to sea connected.
Absolutely.
Let us know a little bit about the kind of work that you're doing with boats to make sure that they do get the kind of data and connectivity they need.
Well, the key thing that we've set our stall out is to try and replicate what we're used to with our smartphones, where we actually doesn't matter whether we're connected to Movistar, we're connected to Vodafone, we're connected to O2, and it doesn't matter whether it's Wi-Fi, in a hotel, or it's data, and it just switches and it happens. And so what we've tried to do at E3 is to replicate the communication system on the boat to be the same as a smartphone. You've got different types of connectivity. You've got 4G, 5G. You've got satellite, and the satellite comes in different flavors as well, from VSAT to L-band, and the ability to switch from one to the other and seamlessly transfer. If you're on a VoIP call, it moves from 4G to satellite if it's in or out of range, that is what we've been doing in terms of the connectivity. And then we also provide the data distribution around the yacht. And that has become really very crucial in terms of cybersecurity protection and everything, to make sure that it's of a certain standard. So we provide the data distribution around the yacht with access points and a physical plug-in to copper and fibre connectivity is really critical these days with all of the rules and regulations for cybersecurity. So that's a bit like the plumbing system. You've got different pipes going around the boat with water being distributed, but this time it's connectivity. And then we also then provide a lot of facilities that you can use the data consumption for.
Actually, you mentioned cybersecurity, and I find that really, really fascinating. I have dipped into some conferences and read some press releases and spoken to some people through this. I think that that's a really important point that everybody's on everyone's mind at the moment, is that the security of the crew's phones, own devices, and all of the systems on board, which are now often connected. They're kind of Internet of Things. Everyone's speaking to everyone. How important, and how has that become kind of changed the face of what you guys do? Because it must be a super focus.
It's very important indeed. I mean, we decided some years ago that our networks, our data distribution systems, have to be IMO ready for the new IMO regulations in was it January 21? Mm-hmm. So we prepared all of our technology to make sure that it was IMO ready, and then IMO has come along, and since then we've been working. We don't actually provide the cyber services ourselves, i.e. the penetration tests, etc. We use a third party. Mm-hmm. We use a third party based here and in London, who are a very good company who deal with that, because you cannot install cyber-ready kit and then certify it yourself that it is cyber-ready. You need a third party to look at your installation to double-check. So that's why we feel that it's ethical that we don't do it ourselves. We have a third party do it and slap our wrist and tell us we've done it wrong, and we have to correct this and do that. So we work with that. But I interesting enough, a couple of days ago, I did a presentation. Well, it was at Asieros for A-Crew. Yeah. And I was saying exactly that. But however, I was quoting some examples of actual real live issues that we've had and experienced, and our cyber consultants have experienced and found. And everything from phishing. We've experienced that ourselves with having a client pay one of our bills for $7,000, and it never arrived in our account. It had been his email had been hacked. Our bank details had been changed, and he'd paid it to this fictitious bank. Well, it wasn't a fictitious bank, and it went off. And by the time we discovered this had all happened, that money had been removed from the account, and they'd done a runner. So real live examples are happening currently in the industry. And then there's GPS spoofing, taking over the GPS on the boat, so the boat goes off to a rendezvous somewhere else, and that is lots of examples like that are actually happening for real at the time, it's a really important element. But one of the biggest issues is crew. Mm-hmm. It's the people. The hardware and the technology is only a small part of it. The biggest issue is the crew and the crew training. And our cyber consultants that we work with, they provide training for the crew. There was, some really good examples of how some of the most sophisticated installations have been put in, but they've been hacked by legal hackers who've been taken on to try and get into the boat. They've been hacked by going in the front door with the passwords, by hacking the crew's social media, finding out who they are, getting into their systems, finding their passwords for the boat, all listed in the notes on their iPhone, and just going in through the front door. But, one of the biggest issues at the moment, obviously in the current situation, there's a massive increase in encouragement for hackers at the moment in the world because of what is going on in the world. And so legal hackers, hackers are being promoted. Please go and hack so-and-so. Please go and hack so-and-so. So there's going to be a massive increase in hacking that's going to go on, whether it's malware or phishing or whatever. But, email is one of the biggest issues. I think it's about 90% of all phishing comes through email. So, we've got to be vigilant, use the various tools that are available to protect ourselves and the boats that we work on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It couldn't be more important, could it? In the last 2 years, obviously, there's been some huge changes in the world. And we mentioned earlier on, you were speaking about satellite in terms of connectivity, which is kind of, we've heard a lot in the news with Elon Musk and SpaceX, Starlink and all the companies. How is the satellite connectivity, how is that different, and how is that changing, especially for yachts, where that they can? So it's basically that they can get connected anywhere on the planet. That's the idea, isn't it? Yeah,
no, absolutely. I mean, the new satellite connectivity that's coming along is called LEO, low Earth orbit satellites. They're much lower than the current GEOs. The GEO satellites that we've all been used to at the moment are sitting out at 38,000 kilometres and in a fixed position, geostationary to where we are. So they move at the same speed as we do. That's why we have, a geostationary satellite is typical as a TV satellite, where you have a dish on the side of a building that points in one direction, doesn't move, because it's pointing at a fixed satellite in the sky that's moving at the same speed as us. But with LEO, they're much lower. They can, as a result, the bandwidth can be faster. But the bandwidth can be faster, and what's called the latency is much, much, much faster between, when you see a newsreader being interviewed remotely and he hesitates because there's a delay for the signal. That's the latency. When you're using LEO satellites, you don't get that. It's instant. It's almost as good as fibre connectivity.
And do you think that's because, I know that there's lots of, people are using AI. There's lots of the metaverse has been talking to experiential kind of mixed reality media that people want to consume now. Do you think that those things are going to be now possible?
Yes, yeah, very much so. As we were talking about earlier, the demand for data, in our world, in the third, in our not in the third world, but in our world, we are absolutely ravenous at data consumption. And there's the rest of the world, the third world, that doesn't actually have the data connectivity. So these new LEO satellites will cover everywhere, provide data connectivity all around the world. But what we can do now is much more sophisticated, we can use a lot more data, and we can have access. We will be able to have access to considerably more data. And one of the devices that I wrote about in the last Islander my column was this holographic portation, which is for real, where you can actually have a video conference, a Zoom-type video conference with a three-dimensional person. It's for real, and it happens, but you need a lot of data to
Absolutely.
do that. You need a lot of data consumption. Now, this is going to be a fantastically cool tech to have on a yacht, and I would imagine that some owners will jump at this because they can actually have a member of the family at the dinner table with them. They could actually talk to Granny for real in 3 dimensions. And this is available now. It's actually being used. We're investigating this at the moment, but it does require a lot of data connectivity. This is it's something that will work with the fastest 4G LTEs and 5G, but that's a limited range. But with LEO, you're going to have this experience almost anywhere on a desert island in the middle of nowhere.
Super exciting, very Star Trek-y, and a little bit scary. But it is very, very exciting. That for me, I have an interest in the kind of VR world and the metaverse, and we've spoken about this on previous podcasts, and we've got another one coming up with Ocean Code to speak about their kind of jump into NFTs. Absolutely, and it's become kind of quite the talking point in the industry.
Yeah, well, it's quite interesting because this holographic mechanism enables the also owners to actually have their NFTs displayed on the boat in 3D. If they acquired some NFT that, such as a yacht from Ocean Code, it could actually be displayed and rotating and stuff when it's not being used for real live holographic conferencing.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating, the idea that you can... I think we've all thought about it for 40 years and seen it on the TV, but now the technology is actually here to keep up with the imagination of people. And like you said, can only happen if there's data everywhere and it works in a seamless way. You guys have expanded in recent years. You're in the States, you're kind of a worldwide installation. What do you think is driving the hunger for bigger and better technology on yachts in particular? Is it just that, that's the focus now is just that everyone wants everything decked out, so you get that connectivity and you get that technology everywhere? I mean, because there's a particular thirst in our industry for the newest and the best in technology always.
There is. I mean, it's very much driven from home and the office. What people can do at home and the office, they want to do on the boat. It's as simple as that. I remember talking to an owner a number of years back, probably about 10 years back, and he was telling me, he said, good communications is the main excuse I need to be able to own and use my boat. Because firstly, I can conduct my business there anywhere in the world. Secondly, my wife will come with me. Because she can communicate with friends, and the kids will come because of social, that they can keep in contact with their friends and upload photographs of where they are and continue in the same vein. So that's what people want to be able to do. One of our marketing phrases is that good communications is the main excuse owners need to get afloat. And it's almost as important as the water that the boat floats on these days.
Yeah, isn't it funny that I think it's an interesting dichotomy, because oftentimes when in some years past, the idea of getting on a yacht is go and kind of disconnect.
I know it is. I mean,
to disconnect, for me, it's still about that disconnection. Absolutely no chance of disconnecting now.
All those years ago, when I was talking about when we first started and we sailed, we were my wife and Nikki and I were both liveaboards, and we sailed around. And the last thing we wanted was a TV on the boat. I mean, we could not believe that these days that people, early days of E3, we suddenly had stabilized antennas, for TV antennas for watching satellite TV, and we thought, I can't believe people want this, and it just took off, and it just grew and grew and grew. We now have literally thousands of satellite decoders on yachts around the world. We've got some yachts with 40 decoders, 40 TVs on the boat. And it's mind-blowing. When our idea of going sailing was to actually look out the window and sit in the cockpit and actually enjoy and look at the reality around us. That's the point, to actually go and sail to places. Yeah,
I must say that disconnection for me is still very beguiling, but I guess if you're just so used to it, then you still need to catch up on your Netflix.
Yes,
so
it's
a different world. Last 12 months, obviously, we've had a lot of changes in the world, but this year, boat shows are back.
Yeah.
And in the States, they never really stopped, did they? But I mean, now in Europe, every boat show is on, and we're just about to jump into show season here in the Med that kicks off next month in Palma. How are you feeling, and how are you finding? Because I know that there's some definitely polarised opinions about whether boat shows are brilliant or not as necessary as they were, since now we're used to all of this new kind of communication. How are you finding it at E3? Is it nice to reconnect with your clients and customers, or are you finding that there's less boat shows needed and just it's not as necessary now we've got Zoom and all of the other tools that we're so used to using?
It's a very interesting question, Lucy. We've had the opportunity to sit back and consider a lot during the pandemic. You know, I'm always looking for silver linings in everything. You know, I struggled hard to find the silver lining in Brexit. And then particularly being an expat living here and the issues. But however, with regard to boat shows and the pandemic, we had a stand at Monaco for 20 years, every year for 20 years until the pandemic. And then Monaco didn't happen and we didn't have the show. And it made no difference to us. Mm-hmm. And, we were spending... probably the most we spent was 60 grand in a year for a Monaco show, excluding people's time. And the year that we actually didn't have a booth there, it made no difference to us at all. We saved 60 grand. And not only that, but one show after the other, we saved an awful lot. So it made us seriously reconsider our marketing. Mm-hmm. And it gave us the excuse to do that. Last year, the Monaco show obviously happened again. They approached us as a really old exhibitor because we'd been there sort of like 7/8 of the time of the existence of the show, mm-hmm. and trying to persuade us to come back. We said, no, we're not going to. We're not going to. And last year we didn't do it. We looked at the way that they had restructured the show to make it much more appealing for ultra-high net worths to actually come to the show. By making it much more expensive from a day ticket point of view and making sure the first day was a special day. Mm-hmm. Now, having been to the show just for 2 days and had as many meetings in outside the show in a condensed 2 days, we achieved as much as if we'd had a booth for the whole 4-day period last year. And not only that, but I totally endorse what the Monaco show organisers have done in terms of the reorganisation of the show. It's really, really key in our industry that those that feed the industry, i.e. the people that buy yachts and charter yachts, need to be looked after and made much easier to feel secure and accessible to go to a boat show. It's not a service show, it's a boat show. So totally endorse what they planned to do, which was to make it much more accessible, easier to go to, safer to go to for the people that feed our industry.
Yeah, and a lot less suppliers. I was there that day because obviously you're doing press things, it's slightly different, and it was visibly quieter on the docks, but you could see that people were actually much happier. Yep. It was a much happier experience. And I agree with you that when it comes to the consumer side of the business, it is important that those people do get a chance to actually look at boats, and they hadn't had. I mean, how much we love, hybrid technologies, and, as we were speaking about earlier on, 3D renderings. It's one thing, but there's another thing to actually step on a yacht, isn't there?
Absolutely, totally. So I think boat shows have got to get back to being boat shows. It's actually for people to come and charter a boat, to look at chartering a boat, or to actually buy a boat. Mm-hmm. And all of us, we play second fiddle. Service companies such as E3, we play second fiddle to that. We've got to have the people owning the boats and using the boats for us to exist.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? I think probably yachting is one of the only industries where you'd have a trade show that's B2B and B2C at the same time.
Yes.
It's quite fascinating. There's not a lot of other industries who do that.
Yeah, it's the way it's evolved over the years, and as a result, we've been caught in this trap of exhibiting, having to exhibit at these shows, all of these shows, because they've had a service side to it. Now, I'm a great believer now. Okay, we are exhibiting. We are exhibiting at Palma because it's on our doorstep and it's our home
show.
So we are exhibiting at Palma this year. We didn't last year. But however, we will exhibit at primarily our main focus, if we have our own booth, will be at service industry shows like Mets, where people come to buy stuff to put on their boat.
Absolutely.
And that's where our show focused. The rest of the other shows we'll go to, but we'll walk them. I mean, we've just done Palm Beach. We've done Miami. We've done Palm Beach already this year with my team in the US. We walk the show. We make a big plan, and it works fine. It's great.
Yes, and all that money that could have been spent on stand is quite a lot of fun corporate entertaining for your clients, I'm sure, and networking.
Yes.
How is the feeling in America? Because it has been very, very different. The way that the Europeans and the Americans approach the pandemic. I mean, obviously, Florida has been open and good for business when most of the rest of the world was shut. How was the Palm Beach show, and how was Miami? I mean, how has it been in the last few months?
I mean, the reports that I've had literally in the last last couple of days, Palm Beach, there's a lot of boats for sale. There's a lot of people looking for owners for their boats. But obviously, it's a show to sell boats, so that's not surprising, really. But it's buoyant. People are using their boats. They're going out to the Bahamas, the Caribbean. They're using them a lot. We had a number of clients. During the early stages of the pandemic, there was a really big black hole in our business where people cut all of their communication contracts. They suspended everything. They didn't renew their TV contracts. They didn't. So in the first part of the year, that was a really big hole. But in the States, that didn't happen. People said, "Oh, let's go and use the boat. Let's use it as an isolation pod. Let's go and get offshore. Let's take the kids. Let's do their education." So we had lots of expansion of boats, VSAT, bandwidth, and etc. heading into the Caribbean. That didn't happen here until later. So everywhere's got a different profile. I mean, the south of France has got a different profile to Mallorca. Everywhere's got a different profile, which you learn about over time, which is it's exciting stuff, and it keeps you on your toes.
Yes, and you must have been kept absolutely on your toes as a problem solver and an entrepreneur in these last 2 years, especially trying to figure out ways around all of the problems, which no one could have foreseen. It's incredible, and very, very glad that E3 is doing so well. Just before that we wrap up, I always ask the guests to come on the show, if you had a week off, which sounds like, you could only dream of a week off. If you had a week off and you could go anywhere in the world and do anything you wanted, budget and all of the logistics notwithstanding, what would you be doing? What would be your ultimate week if you could spend one?
To be go sailing. One of the places that I've sailed since I was knee high to a grasshopper, and one of the, obviously our life as a liveaboard for 4 years in azure blue bays, palm fringe beaches. I could do that for another week.
For a week, it's fine. Don't make me want to do it for several months.
No. I would go to somewhere like the BVI's or somewhere like that, or Borneo or somewhere dramatic and different. Yeah.
Where perhaps you wouldn't want to watch your TV.
Yes, I wouldn't. No, I'd scuba dive. I'd just enjoy the wildness and
I think we're all quite excited about proper long-haul travel again and having those weeks away. So let's hope that you're busy enough that you do get a week off or two this summer where you can go and do some exploring. Roger, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And, of course, don't forget to see Roger's column in the Islander magazine, and you can find him at all the usual places, E3 Systems, of course, if you want to go and check out anything to do with connectivity. And you can see him, of course, Roger and the team at the Palmer Show at the end of April. So we look forward to seeing all of you guys there if you make it over to Mallorca. And thank you very much again for joining us, Roger.
Thank you.
And many thanks to you for tuning in for another episode of the Islander podcast. I really do hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Roger as much as I did. He's a really fascinating guy. And if you'd like to find out more information about the yacht industry and the Islander magazine, you can check us out at theislander.net. There's other episodes of the podcast there or wherever you usually find your podcasts. And if you did enjoy this episode, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you next time.